It's been 20 years since Yu-Gi-Oh first started and proved that it's possible to take a simple children's card game to the next level. Hi, I'm Alyssa with Channel Frederator, and if you think you're capable of taking on a blue-eyes white dragon, then you may be ready to travel back 5,000 years to meet your good friend, Yami Yugi. Hold on, because today we're bringing you 107 facts about Yu-Gi-Oh! It's time to duel! Yugioh is an anime series that tells the story of Yugimoto, a high school student with a passion for games, who's also the reincarnation of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh whose spirit lives inside the Millennium Puzzle. The 7 Millennium Items include the Millennium Puzzle, Ring, Eye, Necklace, Rod, Key, and Millennium Scale. While all items possess ancient powers, not all have a spirit living inside them. The English translation of Yugioh means Game King, or King of Games. Yu-Gi-Oh's creator has a passion for both gaming and manga, and the flawless combination of the two genres made the Yu-Gi-Oh manga his first success. Takahashi tried many different stories before landing on Yu-Gi-Oh! The first manga published was a high school comedy, which flopped. He then tried to tell a story about professional wrestling, but that didn't work out either. Takahashi is a big fan of the action game. Before Yu-Gi-Oh, he wanted to create an action-packed manga, but he felt as though he couldn't create anything that would be on par with Dragon Ball Z. Instead, he decided to bring his passion for gaming and his love of action storylines together to create a new genre. With that in mind, he created Yu-Gi-Oh! It took Takahashi over a year with the help of his editor to have a fully fledged concept of Yu-Gi-Oh! And all of its characters. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga was released in 1996 and was published in Japan by Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump. At first, the manga wasn't strictly about the Duel Monsters card game, but dealt with many different games. The manga was much more violent and intense than the very heavily edited anime that was brought to the United States in 2001. Minor characters were often killed off by the Pharaoh or other villains with access to alternate dimension known as the Shadow Realm. Takahashi stated that he wasn't sure how American audiences would react to Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the story revolved around a young Japanese schoolboy. But hey, anyone can relate to a scrawny kid who wants to just be cool in front of their crush. Many viewers were immediately drawn into Yu-Gi-Oh's intricate story and characters, but were very disappointed to find out that a lot of the material had been altered upon being purchased by 4Kids. Yu-Gi-Oh is owned by Viz, Konami, and Kazuki Takahashi.
While Viz was responsible for publishing the comic,
Konami had the rights to the card game and console/mobile games. 4Kids dealt with the anime and merchandising. The original anime adaptation is known by fans as Season 0. Season 0 adapted the first 7 volumes of Kazuki Takahashi's manga. It aired in 1998 and was never officially released outside of Japan. Season 0 was filled with darker material than the seasons and stories that came after it. Almost every episode featured a new game that the Pharaoh played based on his opponent's personality. The games had much higher stakes and usually ended up with someone dead, insane, or headed off to the Shadow Realm. Imagine 4Kids trying to edit this for young viewers in the US. The original 7 issues of the manga and the first series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was intended to be in the horror genre. This explains why the Pharaoh had a far more menacing personality, much like the other ancient spirits encountered later on.
Instead of horror themes, the manga shifted its focus to competition and camaraderie,
since fans reacted best to the characters' strong friendships. The Yu and Yugi, combined with the Jo and Jonochi, or Joey in the American version of the series, creates the word Yugioh, which translates to friendship in English. Takahashi hoped that American children would get the strong sense of friendship out of the show. Another major theme in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the idea of having another self inside you. Takahashi always believed that everyone has another self, whether it's a goal they wish to see one day or a self that is a product of one's circumstances. He feels that no matter where this other self came from, it's important to keep an eye on it and reach for the goal which drives a person. While most characters were brought over from the first 7 issues of the manga and Season 0 of the show, one character was left behind.
Miho Nosaka was dropped from the main group,
even though she was Anzu, Taya in the American dubs, closest friend in the manga and original show. She even had a Duel Monsters deck, but very little is known about it or her play style. The first time Duel Monsters appeared in the show was during Season 0, but at that point it was actually called Magic and Wizards. In Japan, the show is known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters.
This was to separate the later series from Season 0.
Before Duel Monsters launched the series into card game territory, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is more or less based on Yami Yugi's grim gambling spree through various games. It wasn't until 2000, 2 years after Season 0's air, that Duel Monsters was released. During Season 0, fans got so excited whenever Duel Monsters was played that Takahashi decided to make it the main focus of the later seasons. When Shonen Jump kept getting calls from young readers asking where to find Duel Monsters, Takahashi knew that he hit something big. He started fleshing out Duel Monsters as an actual game to make it for the basis for the series, noting that it was more thrilling to battle against a human being than a machine. The characters with the most notable name changes from the Japanese anime to the American dub are Joey Wheeler,
Jonochi Katsuya,
Taya Gardner,
Mazaki Anzu,
Tristan Taylor,
Honda Hiroto,
and Duke Devlin,
Otogi Ryuji.
In his original incarnation, the character Ryo Bakura, host of the evil spirit that dwells within the Millennium Ring, had a sister who passed away in a car accident. Not much is known about her, and in the subsequent seasons of the show and manga, she's not acknowledged at all. Takahashi said his favorite character design was Yami Yugi, the Pharaoh. He also joked about how sometimes when he is drawing Yugi or Yami Yugi, He has trouble fitting their massive hairstyle onto the page. Takahashi loved games as a child and always envisioned the player as a hero. He wanted Yugi to represent young children who may seem weak, but have the potential to become a hero and save the day. Seto Kaiba is actually based off of a person that Takahashi met in real life. Takahashi's friend knew another avid card gamer and asked him to teach Takahashi how to play a game. The man refused to teach Takahashi until he had reached 10,000 cards. Initially, Takahashi was angry about someone refusing to teach him how to play a card game. It wasn't until later that he realized someone that petty and self-centered could make a great adversary for Yugimoto in the world of gaming and duel monsters. Kaiba Corporation was once known as Kaiba Heavy Machinery Industry, when Seto Kaiba's adopted grandfather was the head of the company. Takahashi said the company was a war profiteer until Gozaburo, Seto and Mokuba's adopted father, took the reins. Once Seto got a hold of the company, he started to take all of the knowledge of the high-tech industry and gear it towards gaming. Takahashi said that Seto felt that war and games were one and the same, which says a lot about the character of Kaiba. Chill out, man. It's just a game. Viewers quickly realize Seto Kaiba is quite the sore loser when it comes to Yugi defeating him in a duel. In the early chapters of the manga and season 0 of the anime, Kaiba built a whole theme park named Death Tea to try and recreate the shadow game of the pharaoh that he lost to, and also to kill Yugi. Yugi's grandfather, Sugaruko, was a gaming master who traveled the world to play all sorts of games with different people. So when he heard the Egyptian legend of the Shrine of the Game of Darkness, he attempted it. Every other person who tried to solve the mystery died in the process, but Sugaruko, barely, made it through with the Millennium Puzzle. He later entrusted Yugi with it. Takahashi got the inspiration from Marek after realizing he didn't like carrying around a cell phone. He didn't want his assistants to be able to find him whenever they wanted and be able to get inside his mind during his free time. He explained, "And then I got an idea for a character, a rude guy who barges into people's minds. And that's the origin of Marek." In the official character guide, Yugioh Character Guide, The Gospel of Truth, Kazuki Takahashi mentions that he believes Joey is stronger than Seto Kaiba and Yugi, even though they are portrayed as the two strongest duelists in the show. Takahashi oversaw the character designs for Yugi/the Pharaoh, Seto Kaiba, Ryo Bakura/Yami Bakura, Joey, Taya, and Tristan. He created and oversaw the designs of all Yu-Gi-Oh characters from Duel Monsters, but also had assistants who helped with the design process later on. All of the Yu-Gi-Oh main characters are very identifiable when it comes to their hair, but two characters changed drastically from the start of the series up to now. Seto Kaiba's hair started out green, while Joey Wheeler had much softer, shorter hair. While his hair is still blonde, it's now much more angular. In the English version, the only Egyptian god card not to be named after an ancient Egyptian mythological being is Slifer the Sky Dragon. When translating the series, the card was named after Roger Slifer, who worked on the show at the time. When Takahashi was studying the history of games, he learned that games originated 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. For some storylines, Takahashi actually went to Egypt for research. He loved the atmosphere in Egypt, or as he states in their frankness, and was inspired by his visit. When its television run ended in 2004, Duel Monsters had 224 episodes total. There are over 700, if not 1,000 creatures for Duel Monsters. Takahashi stated that it was certainly difficult to develop them, but he tried to create each monster according to characters that they would be played by. For example, Seto Kaiba's playstyle in Duel Monsters is mean and vicious, so he designed many of the monsters for him with that in mind. Seto Kaiba's most notable and favorite card is the Blue Eyes White Dragon, which also happens to be Takahashi's favorite monster that he's created. This may be why viewers see it so often when Kaiba duels on screen. In fact, Blue Eyes was the first Duel Monsters card that Takahashi ever introduced during the development of Yugioh, and it was also an instant fan favorite when the show aired. Takahashi's top 10 favorite cards besides Blue Eyes White Dragon include the Dark Magician, which is also Yugi's favorite, Kuribo, Red Eyes Black Dragon, Panther Warrior, Buster Blader, Dark Magician Girl, Exodia, Time Wizard, and Gaia the Fierce Knight. The legend of Osiris, the Egyptian god who brought about civilization, states that he was betrayed by his brother Set. Set cut Osiris into 5 pieces that were scattered around Egypt. Similarly, Exodia can only be summoned when the 5 pieces of his body, featured on 5 separate cards, are in your hand. Takahashi's dog was even made into a Duel Monsters card. The Shiba Warrior Tarot card is a small orange Shiba Inu with a green bandana, just like the bandana that his dog wears. In March of 1999, the first Yu-Gi-Oh movie was released in Japan. It was never released in America, and the character designs resembled those in Season 0. The Yu-Gi-Oh film was produced by Toei Animation. It was simply known as Yu-Gi-Oh, while the movies that came after were given longer titles to differentiate them from one another. 4Kids also produced and wrote the first Yu-Gi-Oh movie to debut in the United States. Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie debuted in theaters in the United States in August 2004, and later in November 2004 in Japan. The Japanese title for the film was Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light, and had 11 minutes of extra scenes for Japanese audiences. Takahashi sat on a panel at San Diego Comic-Con to discuss Yu-Gi-Oh! For the very first time in July of 2015. Takahashi is a fan of Western comics as well as manga.
His favorite Western comic is Hellboy by Mike
Magnola. So when Shonen Jump asked Takahashi to draw his favorite comic character with a Yu-Gi-Oh style hair, he sent them his drawing of Hellboy. Jump forwarded the drawing to Magnola, who drew Hellboy wearing the Millennium Puzzle. These pieces were traded between the two, but there was never any talk of a crossover. In Volume 27's Forward, Takahashi wrote that he procrastinates when it comes to getting work done. He happily plays games, eats, and sleeps up until the wire, where he gets his work done and thinks, "Why didn't I start that sooner?" Many of us can relate. Gospel of Truths was published in Japan in 2002. This character guidebook was followed by another similar guidebook titled Yugioh, Character Guidebook Millennium Book. Takahashi got so busy back when he was working on the weekly manga publication that he started to miss gaming. He mentioned that his favorite games to play are tabletop RPGs. One night when Takahashi went out to play pachinko, he hadn't noticed his bag had been stolen. Not only did the thief nab his wallet, but they also took all of the early ideas that Takahashi had written down for Yu-Gi-Oh's creation and future chapters. He wishes he could have found them, since he's not even sure what he wrote down at this point. Takahashi's studio is filled with Yu-Gi-Oh merchandise, as well as many other trinkets from influential movies and comics from America, such as Alien, Star Wars, and Terminator. Yu-Gi-Oh has sold over 25 billion cards worldwide since 1999 when the game was released. This made Konami the best-selling trading card company in 2011. In 2013, the Yu-Gi-Oh Championship in Long Beach, California broke the record for largest card game tournament ever with over 4,000 players. Alec Alvarez and Freddie Scheinfeld are the composers of the Yu-Gi-Oh soundtrack. They generated the music for the American version of the Pyramid of Light, or Yu-Gi-Oh the movie, and have been working on the series ever since. From Season 3 on, they've continued to compose the music for the original series and for the spin-offs. Alvarez and Scheinfeld were invited back to compose the music for the Dark Side of Dimensions when it was being translated for Western audiences. This time around, they tried to make the soundtrack more cinematic by including more choirs. Alvarez mentioned that the hardest part of composing the music for Dimensions was convincing the producers, music producers, and writers on both the US and Japanese teams to try something new and improve their pitch for the cinematic soundtrack. Scheinfeld feels that their Yu-Gi-Oh experience has come full circle. After working on several spin-offs, Scheinfeld and Alvarez returned to the original to create its soundtrack. He said, "We kind of came back to some of the original ideas as far as the themes that we needed to use because those are the characters that everybody knows." After the Duelist Kingdom arc, the show introduced Duke Devlin, a new student at Domino High who started his own game called Dungeon Dice Monsters. It used the same characters from Duel Monsters but with different rules and dice, replacing the card game aspect. Konami tried to recreate the success of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game by making Dungeon Dice Monsters, but wasn't nearly as successful. Yeah, you really can't recreate the magic. In the original Japanese cut of the Duelist Kingdom arc, both Maximilian Pegasus and Bandit Keith die. However, in the American dub, Bandit Keith is thrown through a trapdoor after threatening Pegasus, and Pegasus becomes a recurring character in the future seasons and movies. Other edits included taking guns and various weapons out of scenes. In an episode during the Battle City arc, the bottom half of Marik's Millennium Rod is completely edited out since it's a hidden dagger that he may be trying to take someone out with. Back in the day, fans who preferred the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh used to have trouble viewing the show in their preferred language. Now, episodes with the Japanese dialogue and English subs can be easily found on Crunchyroll. Woo! Technology! Takahashi has an Instagram account where he uploads new Yu-Gi-Oh themed work on an almost daily basis. Most of the work is done digitally, but some roughs and sketches are posted as well. One season of the Yu-Gi-Oh series was especially commissioned by 4Kids Entertainment in 2006. The season explored the game of Capsule Monsters and is considered one of the weaker arcs in the series. It never aired in Japan. At some points during Yu-Gi-Oh the movie, Seto Kaiba's hair glows green. As mentioned, his hair in Season 0 was originally green, so this clever homage was added in for the hardcore fans to pick up on. While working on the Ancient Egyptian arc, Volume 20 of the manga, Takahashi was rushed to the hospital for stomach ulcers. He mentioned that his design for Zork Necrophadus must have been because of his lack of sense. During the time that Takahashi was sick, he also had to cut the story of Priest Seto and Kisara short, which he regrets. This story was intended to flesh out the significance and relationship between Kaiba and the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but instead it only gave glimpses. At the height of Yu-Gi-Oh's popularity, YouTube user Little Karibo started the popular and hilarious Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series on his channel. The Abridged series now has its own site where it hosts all of the original content. The Abridged series has become so synonymous with Yu-Gi-Oh! And its fanbase that it's almost become canon with the original series itself. It parodies the absurdities of the show, like the fact that Duel Monsters is a card game made for children, but teenagers and adults play it with total seriousness and high stakes. In 2017, Yu-Gi-Oh! Celebrated its 20th anniversary, meaning we got the newest installment in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, Yu-Gi-Oh! The Dark Side of Dimensions. This new movie includes the original cast of Yugi, Joey, Bakura, and Kaiba as they duel against a new enemy named Aigami. The story takes place after the manga series. Fans of the original series were concerned that a lot of the adult themes would get cut in the process of translating it, as happened in the past. 4K Media assured followers online that this would not be the case. saying, "The changes in the English version are English cards and signs appearing in the film." Sounds good to me! 4K Media also confirmed that the original American voice cast had come back to reprise their roles in the film. This was especially exciting for characters like Yugi, the Pharaoh, and Seto Kaiba. Dark Side of Dimensions was released in April 2016 in Japan and had an American release of January 20th, 2017. The DVD and Blu-ray version is set for release in America on June 27th, 2017. Over 500 theaters across America and Canada held screenings of Dark Side of Dimensions and brought in over $750,000 worldwide. For the new Yu-Gi-Oh movie, Dark Side of Dimensions, Takahashi decided to write and draw 2 new chapters for the Yu-Gi-Oh manga to tie in with the film. Both new chapters were published in issues 19 and 20 of Shonen Jump. They were released in April of 2016. The manga officially ended in March of 2004 in Japan. The series wound up with 343 chapters in total. With the release of the new film, Konami put out 3 new Yu-Gi-Oh games in 2016. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters Ultimate Card Battle for the Nintendo 3DS, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for the iOS, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist for Steam. Updates were also made for Legacy of the Duelist as well as Duel Generation, a mobile game, later in the year. Just between the years of 2001 and 2009, 4Kids Media made over $152 million in profits from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and various merchandise from the show and manga. In 2011, Takahashi compiled many different sketches and finished pieces into a beautiful art book aptly titled Duel Art. It contains art spanning across each Yu-Gi-Oh! Series until that point, along with artist notes. Duel Art was translated into English by Udon Publishing. Udon editor-in-chief Eric Koh said that while it may surprise some American fans that the publication was brought over to the States, it was mostly due to the fact that he and his staff just really love Yu-Gi-Oh! The Duel Art release in America was delayed from May 2015 to September of 2015 because Udon prioritized ensuring that each reproduction was just as good as the original Japanese printing of the book before they released it onto shelves. Koh also mentioned that to make sure Takahashi's art stayed bright and vibrant for the American printing, Udon needed to use a special 5th ink in the process. Udon Publishing recently put out a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Art book titled Art of the Cards. It contains over 800 illustrations of the monster and magic cards from Duel Monsters and Capsule Monsters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Between February 1st, 2017 and March 29th, 2017, the anime cafes in Japan were Yu-Gi-Oh! Themed in celebration of its 20th anniversary and the screening of the new movie. Yu-Gi-Oh! May have ended its television run in 2006, but the franchise lives on in different spin-offs, including Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, which was just released in May of 2017. Solomon Moto, Yugi, and Seto Kaiba all make appearances or cameos in the various spin-offs and movies that have come since Yu-Gi-Oh!'s original incarnation. For example, in the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Yugi makes a cameo appearance and gives the new protagonist Jaden a Winged Kuribo card. The episode is amply titled The Next King of Games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been a staple of Japanese television since it started back in 2000, and now that time has passed, Japanese producers have decided to remaster poignant parts of the series. The remastered material is called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 20th Remaster, and will contain notable episodes from the Battle City arc, such as when Joey dueled Marik and Yugi dueled Seto Kaiba. The remastered Battle City arc aired on TV Tokyo in April 2015. It also included the virtual reality arc where the cast meets Seto and Mokuba Kaiba's estranged cousin Noah, which was originally thought to be left out. Throughout the series, Yugi has a total of 45 duels. Of the 45 duels, he has only lost 7, tied for 3, and won 37. That's pretty impressive. When asked what character he identified with the most, Takahashi said that he really loves Yugi, but always wanted to be Joey. As he gets older, he feels more and more connected with Yugi's grandfather, Suguruko. In 1999, when the manga had been running for 2 years, there was a short snippet in Shonen Jump preceding the chapter of Yu-Gi-Oh!, in which Takahashi wrote, "If you ever made a friend through shared interest in Yu-Gi-Oh!, then I'm happy I've made this manga. That is what brings me the most joy." Despite the fact that it's been 20 years since its inception, Takahashi remains deeply involved in the series. Producers of the newest movie said that he oversaw the development and execution of The Dark Side of Dimensions. The Dark Side of Dimensions picks up 6 months later as the characters prepare to graduate from high school. Producers chose to continue the story here as this marks a huge change in the characters' lives, which they were interested in exploring. The Dark Side of Dimensions' new villain Agami is voiced by Daniel J. Edwards. He has been a fan of the show since he was in middle school watching the original series. Talk about a dream job. Do you feel like the king of games now? I'm Alyssa, and thanks for watching 107 Facts About Yu-Gi-Oh! Did we leave anything out? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to subscribe to Channel Frederator and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. And remember, Frederator loves you.